Hey YouTube land, Tychondrous there doing another action figure review, and this time it's for the 2000, I think it's 2021, maybe 2022, it's the release this year. This is for the Masters of the Universe Origins Stridor. Now before we get on to the figure, we'll have a quick look at the packaging, and we'll have a quick look at the packaging and the way the box looks. So you have this really nice artwork up on top of the box. It is kind of part of the flat area of the box and then part of the actual back. So if you were to fold it like this, you get to see the whole image. So on this you have basically, you have He-Man riding Stridor, which is kind of a change up from him usually riding along Battle Cat. Now, they also have Fisto in here, and that is an interesting nod because if I remember correctly, the original lineup from the original Mattel release, when they first released Stridor, they released him in a 2-pack with Fisto, I think. And I think they released him on his own then later on, or I think it might have been the only way to get Fisto, and then you could get Stridor on its own, and Fisto on his own. But he was packed together, I believe, with Stridor at one point. Then you have Screech, which is basically a evil redeco version of the sorceress in her eagle form. You have a Roton with, I believe it is Dragon Blaster Skeletor riding on it. It's not Terror Claws, even though it has sort of the kind of Terror Claws look. It's Dragon Blaster Skeletor, and hidden up here in the shadows you have Sunman, which is that new figure that's coming out later this year. So it has an interesting nod to some of the new figures, stuff that hasn't been released yet. The Roton hopefully will see a release. Usually the artwork kind of gives kind of nods or hints at what might be coming down the line for this figure line. So hopefully we will get that. In the corner there is an image of what you get in the box, and onto the side of the box there's this cool kind of dragon artwork, and on the opposite side is another dragon, but this one is designed more like the blaster from the dragon that comes with Dragon Blaster Skeletor. So there is that. So you have that interesting look. And then on the back of the box, it shows more stuff. Oh, it's also worth noting that on the front of the box, the bottom of this is the drawbridge to Castle Grayskull that He-Man is charging out of. So if you flip around the back of the box, you can see the drawbridge looks quite similar. And then you have another version of He-Man riding, or another artwork of He-Man riding Stridor, and you actually get the normal version of the sorceress in Falcon mode, or in Falcon version. I think she has an actual Zor, I think was the name that they gave her when she's in Falcon, in her kind of Falcon form. And then it gives a few other interesting bits and bobs on here. So it shows you what you get, what you can do with the figure. It also shows you some of the bits that attach to the figure, and this base plate that you get as a stand will also connect to a Castle Grayskull, which is quite cool, and then gives other figures that are been released. So the ones I don't have yet are Terror Claws and Flying Fist He-Man. They're deluxe figures, but these are part of the, is it wave 6, wave 7? They're one of the more recent waves that they've released. So you have Jitsu, Stratos, Mini Comic Stratos, Buzz-Off, and Sorceress in her regular colors. So out of all this lineup, only 2 figures are new. Jitsu and Buzz-Off are new sculpts, or new releases. Stratos is a repaint or re-release of an existing figure. Again, Sorceress is also a re-release of an existing figure. The first version of Sorceress is the one that came packaged exclusively with Castle Grayskull in all white. This is the one that's more traditional colors, as in the release of the regular figure. So it's done more like her original figure. And Stratos, as I mentioned, is done as a mini comic style Stratos, not the ones that get packaged with the figure, but like older mini comics. Some of the earlier depictions of Stratos had him in that kind of beige skin tone, as opposed to the all grey skin tone that the figure would later be released in. So there is that. So we'll get onto the figure and we'll get cracking and see what you think of the figure. So moving on to the figure, this is essentially what you get in the box. So there is some assembly required. This base plate requires you to put in the stand, and these what I can only think of are kind of like jumps or some sort of kind of fencing. So they are separate in the packaging. I'm not sure if they are supposed to come out once installed. I think they're a one fit thing. So once they're in, they're in. Unfortunately, I didn't do it on screen because I've had this for quite a while. So it's been assembled for a little bit. Here you can see this kind of indent. And this is where it's supposed to connect into Castle Grayskull. So you kind of put it in like that against Castle Grayskull, and you have this piece that comes out. There is a plug on the bottom of Stridor. He stands perfectly well without it, but you can plug him into this to make him stand a little bit better. So you can also, well, I don't want to plug it in and out, but this guy actually has more articulation than the Origins Battle Cat. We'll get into that in a minute. There's a few more accessories and small pieces that I need to go through. So another thing that you have to put into place are these cannons. These are separate on the figure, so they just plug in at the side. I believe they're designed in such a way that you can actually remove them and actually use them as blasters for the figures. I don't think that was an option on the original. I think it was only something that was done for these. The original I do have, but the handle parts are actually smaller on it. In fact, what I'll do is I'll get this out of the way quickly and I'll do a comparison. So here is the original Stridor, who has cobwebs and furrows and hair on him because he's quite old. So he does have those blasters, but you will notice that they don't have the extended pieces coming out the side. And I think the reason for that is these ones do pop out. They do tend to pop off if you want. And I think if you have a figure with a trigger hand, if I have one here, I'll just use, I have them off here at the camera, which is, oh crap, already Zodak. So you can actually use them as blasters for figures, as far as I can tell. They do hold into the hands. Just put his gun back in so I don't lose it. And they peg in via this larger peg at the side. You could be mistaken for putting them in this way, but they don't go in that way. They actually go in through the larger peg and they just kind of wedge in. You can rotate them up and down just like on the original, but they don't like click into place or anything like that. So I believe they are supposed to be removable, so you can use them as blasters. So sticker wise, this thing is pretty much the same as its original counterpart. So instead of having sculpted details like they did with Classics, now there is a Classics version of Stridor, and I'd imagine it's very similar to this. This one is slightly, I would say, scale-wise, it's slightly bigger in certain aspects to the original. You even have the rotating gun at the back. What is cool is you get these blast effects. You get 3 blast effects, one for each gun. So you have the 2 guns at the front and the one on the back, and you just slide the blast effect onto the gun. You kind of have to wiggle it on a small bit and it fits on. It's the simulated firing. Now it works really only with the front guns. You can't really get it. You can get it onto the original ones as well, but it doesn't fit on the rear gun properly. But if you flip it around, you can fit it, if you want to be daring, onto the original one as well. Now my original one never had the headpiece, which again is removable on the original. My one doesn't have it, but if you have the Origins one, it does sort of loosely fit. The head is slightly bigger on the new one and it has a bit more paint echo, obviously, but you can, if you're missing that one, put the headpiece on it. And what's cool about this new version is you actually get 2 headpieces. So you can get this slightly more armored one or the less armored one. Now, as far as I can tell, the armored one is based off the version for Knight Stridor, which is basically the Skeletor version, evil version of Stridor. Or I think it's Night Stalker, I think it's called, sorry. Same figure sculpt, exactly the same. They didn't change anything on it other than the fact that I think they gave it on the classics version, they gave it a helmet like this. On the original release, as far as I'm aware, it didn't have a helmet. In fact, they didn't even give it the one that the good version, Stridor himself comes with. So there is that. But it is interesting to note that they give you 2 options, one of which is for like the Night Stalker version, which seems to indicate that we will get a redeco and repaint of this as Night Stalker somewhere down the line. Well, sorry, of this guy repainted and redecoed. Maybe they might change up the blast effects from being blue to maybe a red, which would be kind of cool, so you have different options for the blast effects as well. But onto the figure itself. As I said, it is more articulated in certain points compared to Battle Cat. So unfortunately I don't have my Battle Cat with me to show a comparison, but I'll go through its articulation. Now, one new thing that they added onto this is the mouthpiece with the reins, which is kind of cool. So he has a bit with reins, and it's actually removable. The mouth is on the kind of a spring, so there's a kind of a spring in it. So you can take it out if you wanted to make it look more like the original version. The original version never had reins. I think the figures are just supposed to hold onto, or pretend to hold onto controls inside the actual main body. Because if you look here, if I can show it, there's actually a control panel. So the original figures were supposed to kind of hold into that. As I said, it does have different articulation than Battle Cat, or then more articulation than Battle Cat, so you can actually give it a far more neutral position. If I can just get it to line up properly, so you can get the legs in a far more neutral position. So Battle Cat did have a elbow joint. The Origins version, Battle Cat and Panther have elbow joints, but they don't have the foot joints that this guy has, which is kind of cool. They all have the front swivel and the back swivel for the legs. These ones are on a ratchet, whereas the front ones, they're still on a ratchet, but they're not as ratchety as the rear ones. The head is also on dual ball joints. So if I just take the headpiece off, so you've got a ball joint here at the base of the head, which gives it a slight up and down. You don't get too much side to side, but you get up and down with it. Then you have another joint here. I'll move the gun out of the way. Just here after the third neck ring, which gives it more range of movement. And it also has a swivel as well. So you get a lot of range of movement on the neck, which is quite nice. It is a horse after all, so it should have quite a good neck movement. The eyes are done in this really nice metallic blue, whereas compared to the original one, they were just silvered, which is quite a nice addition. Mostly the paint apps are the same, with extra detailing. You have these extra silvered pieces on the legs, which weren't on the originals. The silver on the back is still the same. Silver on the neck piece is pretty much still the same. It's a little bit brighter. And you have these stickers as well, which are pretty much an exact replica of the stickers that came with the original one. And I know you want to see people sitting in it, so I'm going to get Fisto, because as I said at the start of this, he was originally, as far as I can remember, he was originally kind of packaged with it, with Stridor. So you can have him sitting in this thing nice and comfortable. And if I just put the reins and the bit into the mouth and the reins do have a kind of a rope on it, so you can get the length that you want. Now unfortunately, because Fisto has a permanent closed big giant metal fist, he can only hold the reins in one hand. But he does hold them quite nicely. So if you have figures that have the two grip hands, so there's two grip hands for some of the He-Man figures. In fact, there's not a lot of figures, just kind of thinking about it, there's not a lot of figures have the double grip hands. Most of them tend to have, like Zodak here, most of them have like a grip hand on one side and this open palm on the other. So getting them holding the reins for Stridor will be a little cumbersome, but let's see if we can do it with if we can get him to stop snapping at the waist. Let's see if we get Zodak in here, even though he should have his big magic chair. Now it is a bit cumbersome to try and get them in every so often because the legs will move while you're trying to get them in, but there is a sweet spot for just them to get in. For purposes, demonstration purposes, I'm just going to leave him standing slightly, but he can hold Reins on one hand. I can just get that through his thumb, so he should be able to hold. Now his hand is open. There is a slight bit at the side, so he could potentially hold it with that. Let's see if we can get him to hold it. He might have to squish his hand a little bit, but he should be able to hold the reins. So he can hold the reins with both hands. He just looks a little awkward doing it because he doesn't have a dedicated grip hand on one side. But you should be able to do it with most figures. I'm not sure figures like Buzz Off, who have the claw fingers, will be able to hold him. But when I get one, I might throw him into it, see if he can hold it. So there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video review. I know I said I'd try and get some more videos up and running. I do have a lot of other Masters of the Universe stuff to get through. I have the Wind Raider, the new version of the Wind Raider, which I'm going to do a review of once I can dig out the old one. My old one is incomplete, so just like my old version of Stridor is incomplete, my old Wind Raider is incomplete. I also have the Rise of Evil 2-pack to do a review of, which is the Keldor to Skeletor and was it Trapjaw? I can never remember. Is it Cronus to Trapjaw? And I have a few other figures as well to review. So as I said, just before I go, I don't think I actually showed this on this version of him. So you do have that alternate headpiece, which just slides on, gives it more armored look. So if you do want to have something a bit more armored, you can do that as well. So there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed this quick video review. Well, I hope it's a quick video review for Stridor. When I get around to doing some of the other reviews, I do have the Castle Grayskull set that basically gives the armor. That comes with another plate that you can put on Castle Grayskull. So I'll try and dig out Stridor for that and have that combined, because the Wind Raider also has a place that can combine it to Castle Grayskull. So there's a lot of extra additional stuff for Castle Grayskull. So I might just do an update video when I get some more of that stuff. But as I said, I hope you enjoyed this video and hope you found it informative. And please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Cheers, guys.